Okay, so let's get into this trolley car dilemma. Let's plunge into some new types of scenarios and some ethical questions. For those of you that may have already gone on and watched the video, maybe you'll see some things in here that's familiar because it's already been talked about, but if you haven't, this is your introduction sort of getting into it. So the trolley car dilemma is a very age-old question. There's 3 scenarios in this particular dilemma series, and it's been around for a very long time, and we like to talk about them in terms of ethical decisions and what do we consider to be ethical or unethical. This isn't necessarily bioethics in the sense that bioethics, of course, is dealing with scientific concerns. This is really just making decisions, ethical decisions overall. So let me paint you a little picture of this very first scenario. So in the first scenario, you are walking along. It's a beautiful day. You're just strolling. You're there just, for a nice casual walkabout day. It's not like you're going anywhere specific or you're doing anything in particular, but you're walking along. It's beautiful. You're walking along an area where there's a train track, and you come up to a section where the train track sort of forks and goes left and right. When you see this sort of fork in the road, you kind of in the distance hear a train whistle, and that train whistle indicates an impending train, or what we call a trolley car back in the day. And you hear it way off in the distance, so you know that there's one coming, and you're not really thinking a whole lot of it. Upon closer inspection of the fork in the road, as you kind of move up a little bit, you see that there are people tied to the train track. On the right side of the fork, there are 5 people tied to the track, and on the left side of the fork, there's 1 person tied to the track. You can tell that none of these people can remove themselves from their predicament, and they may be screaming for help or something along those lines. When you get up to a little bit closer up to them, you'll notice that there's a switch, some type of lever, and that lever would ultimately change the trajectory of the train on the tracks, which most train tracks have a way for you to switch direction of the train. And so you can flip that switch and it would change the trajectory of the train. Now the train is coming straight, so you can't make it go backwards, but you can make it turn to the left or stay to the right. Right is its normal straight path. As you sit there, you have to kind of decide. The train is sort of coming up pretty quickly, and you have to make a decision. Do you pull the lever and make the train go to the left, which is towards the 1 person, or do you let it stay straight and go towards the 5 people? You don't have time to untie them. You don't have time to get out there and make a huge difference in what their predicament there is, but you have time to make the train change sides. So the question here is, the ethical dilemma is, do you make it switch to the single person, or do you let it hit the 5? So a lot of people look at this as like sacrificing 1 person for the betterment of a larger group, or, do you kind of risk maybe the train hits the 5 and slows down enough that it only hurts 1 or kills 1 or 2? So there's a lot of questions here. Do you sacrifice 1 for the many? Do you let the many kind of take it? Or do you leave it alone? Some people feel like you can't interfere. It's not their right to interfere. So this is the first scenario that I want you to think about. Now, within that scenario, here's what you're going to do when you go onto Canvas into discussion posts. So I want you to talk about what you would do. Would you pull the lever? Would you not pull the lever? Would there be any other possibilities that you think are possible for this scenario, to kind of talk about what would be an ethical thing or an unethical thing to do? Scenario 2, same basic idea. All right, so we have the exact same picture that you saw in the first scenario. You've got this train track, you've got 2 trajectories, you've got a single person, you've got 5 people. The train's coming. The problem is, the difference is, there's no one walking along, and you're the single person that is tied to the train track. Now, the innate behavior that we have as humans, what we have is what's called the fight or flight. Whenever we're faced with danger or some type of situation, we're going to try to fight, or we're going to try to fight and get out of it. Well, in this particular circumstance, you are not going to be given the ability to flee, to fight. To flight. You're only going to be able to be given the ability to fight. And as people who fight, we're going to just turn and turn and turn and wiggle and all this other stuff and try to get out of it. And so what you manage to do in your scenario is you manage to wiggle an arm free. And that arm is just long enough to reach the lever that we were talking about. So now you have a decision to make. Do you flip the switch and save yourself? or do you flip the switch and save the other people? So it's kind of a thought process. Do you risk yourself for the betterment of the whole community? Or do you let the whole community sort of suffer and you save yourself? And so that's a huge question. I think a lot of people have a hard time because, of course, it's talking about you or them. And then think about this. What happens when those 5 people are the 5 of your most important loved ones in your life versus people you don't know? So that also leads to a different type of question, because we're always inclined to want to save the people that we love. But does that mean that we don't want to save people we don't know? And so those are some things I want you to think about when it comes to scenario 2. In scenario 3, scenario 3 is kind of a funny scenario. These are a little absurd overall, all 3, because it's not something that we would actually face. But the properties of making decisions are things that we do face on a daily basis. But scenario 3 is kind of probably the most far-fetched, but it's the oldest, I think, of the 3 scenarios. So when you look at scenario 3, you're walking along, you come up over a bridge, and you see 5 people strapped to a train track. There's only one trajectory for the train. Train's coming under the bridge. It's going to hit these 5 people. You're on the top of the bridge. You really can't do anything about it. But you get to the top, and there's a guy who also gets to the top, and he's quite a very large person. And if you pushed him off the bridge, he could actually stop the train. His body mass is so large. So it's kind of an absurd question, but would you push this guy off of the bridge so that he could stop the train, potentially die, to save the 5 people, or do you stand there and watch those 5 people get hit by a train? So it's kind of a real tough, I mean, it sounds absurd, but then you really have to think, do you, again, sacrifice one for the betterment of many, or do you just have to watch and let things go the way they go? So that's scenario 3. Before you go further and you really answer all of these questions as to what you would do, I want you to take a few minutes. If you go back to the Canvas content page where you found this video, you will find a YouTube video that actually animates these 3 scenarios and also gives you some thoughts and some ideas of what other people have thought about in terms of these scenarios. So I want you to take a few minutes to watch the YouTube video. It's kind of short, but it's really it's neat actually, because in a way you kind of animate what we were talking about, but also can hear what other people would have to say. And then you're going to go on and you're going to post your reflections, your discussion posts, and what your conclusions are. So I want you to really reflect back on these really absurd dilemmas. So the biggest questions in scenario 1 is, do you pull or not pull the lever? In scenario 2, does it make a difference between known people versus unknown people in terms of sacrificing yourself? And in scenario 3, would you push the guy or not push the guy? So return to Canvas, answer these questions that pertain to each scenario, and have a little fun with it. It's kind of an absurd thing, so there's no stakes here in making these, in assessing these. So the more open you are about it, the more fun dialogue we get to have. Thanks so much, and let me know if you need anything.